Hey guys, it's Matt. Just about 2 minutes to the reading, but if you could stick with me in this opening or introductory section, I really would appreciate it. I'll go through the issues as quickly as I possibly can. One is people will remember I did do a reading on the concept of the graduated animal farm, I think a few months ago. There are similar sections that you could consider a draft. I was working in draft format. I've spent hours on it since. I've cleaned it up. It makes a lot more sense. It flows better. And I have added new sections. But it is similar to what you heard. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all if you stick with me through this long video. But, if anybody's saying, hey, I understand what Matt's saying about the concept of the graduated animal farm and I don't have time to listen to a 40-minute video, there's nothing revolutionary new here, okay, to what was put out. But I have worked on it for hours to clean it up and I added new sections. Two, the note here. Anybody's free to take this video or this reading coming up or capture the audio and make their own video. Now the rest of the book I'm considering, copyrighted work. I only want it on the Quantum of Conscience YouTube channel. But for this one, I would love it if people take the audio portion and they put pictures to it or make a more interesting video. If I just had one thing in all the work I've done to hang my hat on, one contribution, this would be it. Because this has a chance of getting through to people. Once we start talking into that realm of conspiracy, you know how people tune us out and they won't listen. This has a chance of getting through to a lot of people, the way this is put together or the analogy presented. So I'm telling you, when I say this is the most important thing I've done, it is. I really believe that because it has the chance of getting through to so many people potentially. That's why if anybody wants to take it, put pictures around it, email me, and I will, I could even send you the MP3 file of the reading if anybody wants to do a video, and then I'll point everybody back to your channel if you do that. I can't use video, pictures or video at this point. They'll just copyright flag me like crazy, so I can't afford to do it. Also, the email address I will put up at quantumofconscience.com. It's embarrassing, my old email address, but I used to believe in this shit. It's embarrassing. The concept of the graduated animal farm. The collective media of this world, like TV news, Time magazine, for example, documentaries, newspapers, the History Channel, and even many movies, primarily exist to cement a false reality. Hundreds of media sources are there to impose a reality on people before what people believe to be their primary mission, delivering news and information. The examples here run the gamut, from the everyday, like news clippings about a stalemate which causes a government shutdown, to mega blockbuster movies like Apollo 13. Much of the media of this world exists to mislead the population and shape its worldview. The evidence of this is overwhelming. If there's a war that they would like to fight, the media is used to get the population to support it. Think about this. Was there ever a home country history book outside of Germany that said their country was the bad guy in a war? In every conflict, from 1776 through Syria, the United States just happened to always be the good guy, and on the other side is a bad guy, like Saddam Hussein. Do you really think that's possible? Think about it. In this example, a man has been fighting with his wife for 40 years. In every single case, he did nothing wrong. He did nothing at all to start the fight. No one would ever believe that. But everyone thinks their own flag was the good guy in every single war. This by itself proves propaganda through media has always been with us. The mass brainwashing tool of media works for both sides. The I of CBS Evening News tells you that Kim Jong-un is a dangerous dictator. But inside Pyongyang, his media makes him a beloved figure. How can the media on both sides of a conflict be right all the time? It's likely that in most conflicts, most wars, there was no good guy on either side. The leaders of this world, with rare exception, love death, and they likely report into the same org chart. To those who can see the deception, the most obvious manifestation of the media stage show is the ridiculous and quite fake confrontation between the left and the right, put on display in political news shows. All of it is a vaudeville act. John McCain was probably best friends with Chuck Schumer. On TV, the fake conflict appears as things like Chris Matthews versus Bill O'Reilly or Rachel Maddow versus Sean Hannity. The descriptive noun of graduated animal farm is derived from George Orwell's book Animal Farm. The term implies there is a base level media farm one has graduated out of. The base farm is a metaphor for the hundreds of millions who believe media is delivering news instead of manipulation. In this analogy, quote, the main farm is a metaphor for not where you physically live, but where you intellectually live regarding what you believe is real news. If you're a watcher of Fox News on the right, or MSNBC on the left, or CNN, the supposed center, congratulations, you're a resident on the main animal farm. The main farm is massive. It's President Snow's capital in the Hunger Games, and all the districts combined. There are all types on the main farm. A watcher of the ABC Evening News who believes that Plastic Man is reporting objectively lives on the main pen in the main animal farm. In our analogy, the residents there are chickens in a dark warehouse pushed up against 300 million other chickens. Instead of being injected with antibiotics, though, the central Tyson ranch of the United States is chemtrailed and fluoridated. Every so often, though, a chicken looks around and realizes that his predicament, described to him as the love boat, is actually a form of captivity. About 5% of chickens sense deep down into their feathers that there's a greater truth in the world than what the coop broadcasts on the 1984 type monitors found in each pen. After decades of flip-flopping control between the Tyson party and the Purdue party, many chickens begin to understand that nothing ever changes inside their own pen. The monitors above tell them about what Tyson and Purdue are supposedly doing, but the poop in the corner is still piled high. The trajectory of the farm's government in every major area never moves off the line, and some chickens wonder how come there's never a Secretary of Agriculture who's not riddled with scandal. Some seek to know more and believe they're not getting the full story on the main farm. A few plan to climb the wall and get out. The security at the main pen isn't very good. Every week, thousands successfully escape the main farm and pen. Big Brother Tyson expects chickens will get out from time to time, and it has made plans for that contingency called the graduated animal farm. Remember, an escaped chicken is one who questions his current conditions and sees his state of affairs in the main antibiotic warehouse is, quite literally, a mound of shit. So, how does all of this relate to our own capital, one that's literally starting to look like President Snow's from the movie? At least in the movie, there's a group of rebels fighting for freedom. People actually doing something. In our own Hunger Games, Cat is strung out on drugs and doing porn movies. Even though the news tells us that everything is normal, herds of animals are restless, because even the ones with mad cow disease realize something is amiss after going through 20 election cycles of promises and never seeing a delivery. It's like the lunacy of waiting on a Domino's pizza for 14 years, expecting it still might be coming. Every 4 years, there's a new store manager at Domino's who promises you it's still coming. In the real world, nothing ever changes. Look at abortion, for example, when Republicans get in. Based on that alone, who could possibly believe the R versus the L conflict is real? Even on areas or in areas where there's supposed to be a material difference between parties, like abortion, nothing ever happens when that party gets in. It's all talk. Nothing ever changes. Governments just grow and become more perverse in size. Wars never end. New social justice warrior groups are created to breed hate. Thousands of new laws are implemented, and if we chickens are lucky, 1 or 2 laws are removed. An undead, Medusa-like Nancy Pelosi is awoken in the vampire's coven to serve another term while Victor and Marcus sleep. So every day, a few fowl say, "Fuck this," and they begin to climb the chicken wire gates to get out of the main pen. The system knows its basic ruse is pathetic and can only entertain the dumbest of the dumb over the long term. How many decades have to pass where politicians make the same promises never delivered? And how long can the media make that seem normal? There's nothing to see here, folks. There's nothing at all going on. Don't listen to those conspiracy theorists. Go back to your NFL. This is the best a system can do for 300 million people. After 2 years of Russia hacked the election, Russian hacked the election, Russian hacked the election, wrong, Russia hacked the election, Polly want a cracker. After 2 years of that bullshit, some bird brains start actually asking questions. For those about to notice that, quote, something else is going on and things are a little different than what they seem, the system itself has built other pens and other ranches just outside the gates of the main farm to collect up escaped fowl. Every day chickens will graduate out of the old crafted stage show of cable news propaganda and the bullshit sensationalism of the nightly news, like how they terrify you that the next weather system is going to end the world. New words are even invented, like polar vortex, and I'm not kidding, bombogenesis. Bombogenesis. Al Roker actually described that one to me as I was watching him. He explained how a low-pressure system can explode outside of Snooky's sunny bedroom in Jersey and form a nor'easter offshore that dumps 2 feet of snow on Boston. Well, it doesn't matter if they can't go out in Boston. They got the Tom Brady posters. The chicken escapees who've had enough clear the wall with little resistance. Those who get out look around and are quite pleased to find themselves in a place that they no longer realize is just another branch of the main farm. But this new place is better than the old dark warehouse. This new pen seems to be free range and the fences aren't even noticeable. However, these chickens don't realize they're still on the same Tyson ranch. When Neo in The Matrix #3 was able to blow up Sentinels after losing his eyes and with no plug in the back of his neck, he should have realized that he was still in the Matrix. The new farms look like something new, but they're not. It's like an additional set built for the Truman Show after Truman started to question his predicament. But instead of creepy Ed Harris watching everything you do, or Truman, we have the NSA. I will present a partial list of graduated animal farms that lie just outside of President Snow's main capital, where most bird brains still reside. These are some of the most well-known graduated animal farmers: Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, Bill Maher, Lionel Nation, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Michael Savage, Mark Levin, The Economist Magazine, The Financial Times, The Atlantic Magazine, YouTubers like Stefan Molyneux, The Young Turkeys, USA Watchdog, SGT Report, etc., etc. By the way, all conservative talk radio is a graduated animal farm of some kind. All conservative talk radio. When people find these other pens, they think they're finally getting the complete truth of what's really going on. Oh, it's so exciting. There's so much taught in the new pens that CNN never dared mention. They sensed something wasn't quite right in the world and that Anderson Cooper was holding back on them, and these new guys confirm how correct they were. How wonderful to finally find the truth. Each graduated animal farm is very different, and so are the livestock that reside on each farm. A lot of different types of chickens escape the main farm. The graduated animal farmers are specialists over their particular type of livestock. For example, Farmer Alex Jones is expert at gathering up everyone who thinks the government is sinister and who wants an armed revolt to fix it. Those in the Tyson control room don't mind if a few million chickens on the Alex Jones farm are shown real fraud and real corruption in government. Even the false history is gladly exposed through some of the animal farms, for it keeps the livestock satisfied and prevents them from looking for real prison walls, which represents real truth. Chickens on the graduated animal farm don't realize it, but they're still very far away from the things that profane bird brains aren't allowed to know. The Economist Magazine farm is a lot different than Farmer Alex Jones. It's more like a retreat and spa that gathers people who don't think the news is necessarily lying. It's just that it's intentionally dumbed down for the masses who are not as smart as they are. Economist Magazine readers don't look upon CNN as nefarious like Alex Jones's livestock does. They just think that a CNN simplification isn't a complete picture because it's a Cliff Notes version for the dummies that don't have big degrees. Graduated animal farms like The Economist and The Atlantic Magazine seem to reveal the world in a sophisticated way that smart people can understand, and the guy who does their laundry can't. It's the same lie, but with big words and more detail. Nevertheless, the chickens there are very satisfied and believe they're finally getting the news delivered intelligently. If it's written in an intelligent manner with a few big words like alacrity or exigency, it must be real. Personal note, I was on the graduated animal farm of The Economist magazine for a few years, around 1998 or so. I read all the giant 8-page articles on how Robert Mugabe is destroying Zimbabwe. I remember it was in every magazine at the time. And I was so proud of myself that I understood Zimbabwe's history, all the way back to when the white devil got thrown out of Rhodesia. I certainly walked around with my chin up, knowing I understood things about the world the dummies around me did not. Now, I haven't touched an Economist magazine in 10 years, but I'm sure they've written over 20 articles in that time period with a full and complete analysis of the demise of Venezuela and how complicated it all is, from its present troubles of Maduro all the way back to Chavez, the Kim Jong-un of the West. Here's one sentence I've written that's more accurate, in my opinion, than all those Economist articles spanning decades about the demise of Venezuela. Write it on a napkin and slip it over to an Economist reader. Here it is. The most resource-rich country in the world does not have a starving population unless the West and the controllers of this world planned it that way. Now give that note to the pompous assholes who read The Economist. One or two of them may actually ask what I mean by what I just said. The other 5 million of them will just call me conspiracy theorist. Back to our fun chicken analogy. Each graduated animal farmer around the main Tyson ranch is expert at one thing, convincing their livestock they've finally broken free and are now getting 100% of the truth of this world in politics, economics, and history. The point of the graduated animal farm is to keep people away from the most important truths in this world by convincing them not to look for it, because there's nothing more to look for than what's on the farm. This is done by giving away much of the lesser truths of this world, which is like keeping the chickens well fed. To do this, the farmers must serve the animals a high-quality feed so they don't think about escaping again. For example, Alex Jones, as I alluded to earlier, can be a gigantic clown, but he can also be brilliant. He will expose the fraud of the Fed to his audience. He'll expose the banking system and even components of 9/11. No doubt, there is tremendous truth exposed on most of these farms. But as long as Alex does it in a way that makes him look like a madman to the rest of the chickens, he can deliver real information to his livestock without other chickens thinking they're missing out on something. In the case of Alex Jones, the presentation of real information is such a bozo show that nobody outside of his own particular farm thinks it's real. Picture the other animals walking up to the Alex Jones gate and looking in on his InfoWars pen in absolute shock about what they're witnessing. Farmer Alex is in there screaming at his own livestock with a bullhorn and with his pants down. Much of what he's saying seems interesting at first, but no one looking in from the outside is really listening, because now the naked fat man is jello wrestling Jesse Ventura. What they see in there looks so fucked up, so crazy, they want no part of it, and they flap their wings in the other direction. This is exactly the reason he screamed at Piers Morgan in the gun debate on CNN and made himself look like a raving lunatic. Even the 9th grade debating club knows that in order to win an argument, you must stay cool and calm in your presentation. Screaming in someone's face that 1776 will commence again if you take our guns! Ah! That's not a winning strategy in bringing in neutral onlookers. Alex's farm appears so bizarre, the other animals who look over into it are convinced none of it can possibly be true. In fact, they assume the exact opposite must be true. From the perspective of the control structure, they want Alex exposing real truth because they know if he presents it, it won't be believed by anybody outside of his pen. If the Alex Jones farmer is preaching that milk does a body good, most people will look in and infer that milk is poison. If Farmer Alex says that 19 guys with box cutters did not do 9/11, To most people looking in, it surely means that there's no reason to question CNN's version and that Muhammad Atta really did leave his bag of pajamas behind at Boston Logan Airport. Especially in the modern era of the World Wide Web, there's a lot of truth battling for everyone's attention. If you are the system, you simply present the lies from people who appear intelligent, like the plastic man David Muir, and you leak the truth from people who appear to be nuts, like Alex Jones. Because people have completely lost touch with their inner knowing, a tuning fork inside all of us that will align with what is real, people are influenced through presentation and appearance alone. CNN's Situation Room looks impressive. Oh, that must be real. Alex Jones looks nuts, so that's false. Of course, as an animal farmer, Jones isn't presenting the most important truths. He's just feeding his livestock enough to keep them satisfied. And of course, when he can, he's misleading them. For example, he'll prop up a fake President Trump at every opportunity. If at some point he ever goes negative on Trump, that will only be because that's what the script calls for. Most chicken escapees choose a less radical pen than Alex Jones's farm. There's a little farm down the way called Glen Beck Ranch that seems more rational. It also exposes the deplorable conditions of the old Tyson warehouse, but in a friendlier way. At Christmas time, you can watch a live feed of Glenn and his family around a tree snarfing down food. A lot of other farms attract those not quite ready for Alex. The Lionel Nation is a creepy little creature, but he's a friendly schmeagle. My precious. I think I'll get my news there from the Lionel Nation. I'll let that little creep tell me what's right and wrong in the world. The reason for the existence of the graduated animal farm equates to a river and a dam. When pressure builds, the dam must have a way to release water, release truth to the masses, lest the entire dam may break. They release as much truth as necessary to keep the dam intact. The water, or truth, that gets out is real water, but it's advertised as tainted or something that regular people should stay away from. The regular folk know it's bad because of who they find along the edge bottling it up. Alex Jones is there, putting his big fat face on a bottle, so nobody normal will drink it. If it's not crystal clear at this point, Farmer Alex works for the Maine Tyson Ranch himself. A graduated animal farmer is like a friendly prison warden. Now, most animal farms are on the right side of the political spectrum because that's the cell block where 99% of the escapes take place. Think of all the conservative animal farms as Foxconn suicide nets to catch jumping chickens trying to escape the main pen. At its core, conservatism is a normal thing. It's the logical progression for anyone who is not mentally ill. Who of any, quote, normal frame of mind would not look around at a $4 trillion behemoth of waste and corruption and not see that something very fucked up is going on? Amazingly, about a quarter of the country, called Democrats, see no problem with Jabba being a few thousand pounds overweight. These people on the left will readily tune into Rachel Maddow and creeps like Lawrence O'Donnell to see what more the government should be doing and spending to adequately help us. Oh, there's another war? Oh, ho-hum, another war. Who cares? Although the two sides of the political spectrum is fake, there's only one system. The talk show host Michael Savage, a farmer himself, said it best. He said, "Liberalism is a mental disorder." It really is that simple. If one is a Democrat in 2019, one has a mental disorder. Period. That does not mean these people are dumb from an IQ perspective. Intelligence in one's profession, for example, doesn't correlate to being insane from a common sense perspective. 98% of Elon Musk's employees at Tesla, for example, are likely Democrat. Some of the most degreed-up Mercedes-Benz owners are Democrats. Almost all college professors are Democrat. Lawyers are Democrat, but they don't give a shit about the underlying agenda. They're simply for the party that will produce the most laws, that puts money in their own pockets. At least on the political right, there are a few notions that make a bit of sense, like fiscal restraint and tax sanity and a push for certain personal freedoms like the Second Amendment. At least that side makes a little bit of sense. Democrats, the self-righteous insane, don't even seem to care about the rape of the Bill of Rights. Conservatives following Sean Hannity are fooled as to how they're being played with a two-party ruse, but they are very sane people. Those watching MSNBC asking the government to stick its wet octopus tentacle even farther up their ass are beyond fooled. I don't have a word to adequately capture this level of insanity. Yep, the first step for most people in waking up to this reality is the baby step of conservatism. There are other paths, but this one is the most common by far. Of course, the system knows this. The controllers have been incredibly successful using conservatism as their main suicide net to catch jumping chickens. Fox News is their lead orc, with all the other radio talk show goblins marching behind. Conservative hosts all dangle a carrot of freedom that's just out of reach and never quite bitten. Oh, if we can win just one more election, then the America of 1776 will be restored, and we can watch the procession of Hillary Clintons going to jail from our alehouses. Beyond the farmers with the big names that you know, there are hundreds more on YouTube in case a wild horse breaks out of its Rush Limbaugh pen and isn't quickly rustled up into the Glenn Beck Ranch. Those who question reality are relassoed into a new pen, seared with a glowing red brand up their ass, and broke again so they can be ridden by the system. The animal farmers are able to keep the fresh recruits in the new pen satisfied because the farmers there are delivering lots of fresh feed, which is a metaphor for new information backed by real truth. They'll tell you all about the fraudulent fractional reserve banking scam in the Fed. They'll tell you how the Civil War wasn't fought primarily over slavery. They'll tell you that America created and funded ISIS using varying degrees of truth. For example, most will admit ISIS was fueled and created to get that bad man Gaddafi, and as usual, they just lost control of the monster they created. They lost control of the situation. Still a bit of truth being delivered, though, that ISIS was fueled, funded, and created by the United States government. Not the whole truth. Now, people new to these pens hear such unbelievable things for the first time that were never, ever mentioned on CNN that they think they found the Messiah of truth and are finally getting the whole story. Most will get trapped on a farm like the Rush Limbaugh Ranch forever. At each level, only a smaller and smaller group will break free because the escape attempts seem to stop. There's always a graduated animal farm that will deliver a bit more truth, but all of them will keep the biggest secrets from their livestock. And anyone starting to think by putting the pieces together, thinking in the correct way and logically, that by the very definition of graduated animal farm, the way he's presenting it, that there's always one more farm, well, maybe he's a farm. Maybe this guy Matt's a farm. Well, I can only tell you to trust me that I'm not. One, I don't hold the ultimate truth of this world that I'm keeping from you. I'm sharing everything I know. But that's based on trust. You don't really know what I know. Okay, well, come follow me around and see if I ever change out of the same ratty sweatshirt or shop somewhere other than Swan's Pantry where I'm digging through the expired chicken soup. If you ever spot me getting on like a NetJets going out to Hollywood or something, then you might want to call me a graduated animal farm. Most graduated animal farms, they don't do it for free. Actually, I need to clarify something. The top level animal farmers are withholding. They know what's going on. Limbaugh, for example, I believe Anderson Cooper is privy to the creepy backroom conversations, but he's not an animal farmer. He's just a deliverer of propaganda in the main Tyson pen or ranch. The big guys know, but the middle rung or the lower rung does not, in my opinion. So, for example, most conservative talk show hosts, for example, in my opinion, still believe there are two political parties at odds with each other and that American democracy is real. The big guys, Limbaugh, Beck, Alex Jones, etc., know what's going on, and they understand they're simply playing their part in the big, grand play. Most human beings only live to a defined age range, like 70 to about 85. Since most people under age 40 don't give a shit about anything but materialism and selfie sticks, that's not a long time that the controllers need to distract you before you die. They must blind you with only 35 years of distraction during that part of your life where there's at least a chance where you may question something and stand up and call bullshit. But most oldsters will go to their graves watching Fox News to the end, thinking they have it all figured out. What a waste. As mentioned, the progression through the farms on the Republican side, starting with conservatism as the springboard to find truth, is easier to understand. It's far more normal and not insane as it is on the left. They ask good basic questions. Yeah, why are there hundreds of new laws added every single year, and why aren't the old laws ever removed? I'm 56. What the hell do I get for $4 trillion spent a year? I found out that the state pays for all the roads and schools. Why is it called the Affordable Care Act if my friggin' premiums just went up again? Conservatives raise a million good questions, and the animal farmers must be very skilled so the smart ones don't ask unanswered ones that lead to another escape attempt. The main goal is for the animal farmers to make all the insanity on the world news seem absolutely normal. That's not to imply they tell you anything that the government does is good, and they're very quick to point out the debauchery that society delivers is an abomination to conservative values. Their greatest offering on the conservative side is a forum or an outlet to complain about the system. Of course, it's a string of complaints that's contained on the farm and goes nowhere. Here's the key. Just because they tell you how messed up your world is, they still carry forth the message that it's normal. Oh, this is the best a society of 300 million people can do. What the Founding Fathers laid down isn't perfect. Politicians are all the same. We'll just blame the politicians. You can't escape death and taxes. There will always be a scandal in Washington. A main goal of the animal farmer is to make the fucked up look normal. If anything is ever to be fixed, they offer the ruse of the next election to fix it. Did you ever wonder how Rush Limbaugh can be worth about $500 million, at least? I haven't looked at his net worth. It's high. How can some guy on a bunch of 2-bit AM radio stations bitching about the government every day with a snarky attitude be making, like around $40 million a year? Probably more. How much are the commercial sponsors paying for 30-second spots? You see, it doesn't matter if the ad revenues cover the cost of his show or not. The sponsors probably don't even spend enough to pay Rush's salary. It doesn't matter if the show loses $50 million a year. It might. In terms of what Limbaugh means to the control structure, he's worth billions or even tens of billions. The entire control structure hangs on the balance of good animal farmers keeping people satisfied, and Limbaugh is old MacDonald himself. He will endlessly complain about the government, and people will vent their anger vicariously through him. In the end, he cements to the listener that the system is completely real and normal. Sure, the Fed's a bit out of control and there's always corruption, but the listeners sense from Limbaugh that it's the best we can do. They feel Rush is on their side, and if the system was not the best we could do, the big man would get really upset and throw his weight around to fix it. No senator or congressman would refuse a phone call from Limbaugh. They love the audience. They love being associated with their conservative Don Corleone. When they tune in, they observe that Rush generally stays calm and jokes around a lot. The world must be in pretty good shape if Rush is in a good mood most days. Even though Obama's in the White House, Rush still made it through those 8 years, so I guess it's okay. His good mood keeps millions of animals on the ranch passive. The subliminal message is, if things were really as the conspiracy theorists say they are, Limbaugh would see it, and he'd get really pissed off about it. Major league farmers like Limbaugh are expert at moving the goal line back as you're playing the game, or extending the distance of the marathon as you're running it. We'll fully restore freedom in the next election. We'll get them next time. If conservatives can just win back the House or this seat or whatever, we'll be able to fix that problem. If your party is currently in control, then we need to get out the deadwood do-nothings like Mitch McConnell, and that's the reason why we're in a never-ending holding pattern. This is exactly why the congressional and Senate leaders are always pathetic, deadbeat do-nothings like Nancy Pelosi. That's the excuse as to why nothing ever gets done, even when your own party is 100% in control of everything. It's always pushed to the next election. Guys like Limbaugh are expert at moving the goalpost back just at the precise moment when you're ready to attempt a field goal. Thousands of games are played and no one ever kicks. Who notices that strange anomaly? Well, you and I do. That's about it. Again, for the new listener, there is no Republican, there is no Democrat. There is one system. However, a psychoanalysis of the Democrat side and those that believe in it is truly fascinating. Laying these nuts down on a couch is something that would even confuse Freud. After looking at all the evidence for a lifetime that reveals that big government is all about corruption and waste, how can voting Democrat not be a mental disorder? There is no other way to describe it. You know I'm confident that the entire system is fake, but at least the conservative choice makes sense if things were real. Millions of liberals can actually observe a slobbering rabid beast, which is the government itself, and its billion-dollar-a-day waste, and millions more total laws, and they can go to the polls and amazingly ask for more of it. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Speaking of animal farmers, do you remember the movie Animal House? Thank you, sir. May I have another? Well, Democrats will gladly bend over every 2 years for more, and without lube. The leftist animal farmers exist on this side under the names like Bill Maher, Rachel Maddow, and other creepy creatures like, my favorite, Lawrence O'Donnell. The ace in the hole on the Democrat side of the fake fight to keep people who think they're so smart in the pen are the political comedians like Jon Stewart used to be, or whatever his replacement's name is, and Stephen Colbert. Is there anybody more obnoxious in this world than Stephen Colbert? The most uncaring and clueless people on this earth get their news from comedians. Remember what I said about having a high IQ and the ability to be mind controlled? That they don't go together? The libs who watch Colbert and Maher have higher IQs than most people. Of course, that does not mean they're not the most clueless NPCs of all. Salamanders have more common sense via their survival instinct than Bill Maher's live studio audience. How society defines intelligence and the ability to put your shoes on are two totally different things. Most college professors are very smart in their specialty, but in seeing the way the world really works are the dumbest bastards on the face of the earth. Being super smart is almost always paired with an arrogance and a closed-mindedness because everyone in the room must be dumber than they are. The big degrees framed on the wall tell them that few people can teach them anything, so they don't bother to listen much. The methods of the liberal leadership are far different than the Republican farmers because, amazingly, the millions who watch their lib shows sense nothing wrong with the system at all. They have to use different tactics because their target audience is insane. The American population who self-identifies as, quote, liberal, are people being raped in the ass while sleeping through it. They can't even walk in the morning, and then they look to their rapist for help. Amazingly, it seems the leaders of the liberal animal farms are even more skilled than the likes of Rush Limbaugh because these farmers have to actually manage a real insane asylum. Conservatives are mentally sound. All Limbaugh has to do is complain about the government to people who already see how fucked up it already is. How do they do it? How do the liberal animal farmers herd the insane? They have an ace in the hole. And the lib animal farmers need to pull out this elder wand at least once a week. You see, the most vile creature in all the universe always lurks just around the corner. Republicans and the GOP. What the hell did the lib animal farmers do for 8 years when conservatives were not in control? They certainly couldn't complain about Jamie Foxx's Lord and Savior, Barack Obama. It's actually quite simple if you step down to their level. Democrats collectively have been convinced that life itself ends if Republicans gain any more control. It matters not that nothing changes when the GOP seemingly does gain control of everything. The GOP must not go an inch further or we're all doomed. This is the message. Some of the people watching Rachel Maddow may not even love the government, and these atheists are not very patriotic like the conservatives are, so their master of ceremonies can't play on that fantasy. They have been lured into thinking that Republicans will soon end the world as they know it, and that's enough. Even with Obama in the White House, the guard must never be let down because the Republicans are coming to destroy the environment, to destroy sexual rights, and the world. In genius fashion, they simply looked at Paul Revere and they stole his meme, with a slight twist. Add a transgender rider on a gay horse, and all you need to do to fill your campaign coffers is to cry out, "The Republicans are coming! The Republicans are coming!" One if by land and two if by sea are now sexual positions. This is the reason crazy Uncle Joe Biden can speak to a group of black people and actually say, quote, "They're gonna put y'all back in chains," implying this will actually happen if the Republicans win an election. Now don't get triggered by what I said. That's what Joe Biden said, and exactly the way he said it. He changed his pitch and he said, "They're gonna put y'all back in chains. Go look it up." People being triggered listening to this. Give me a break. Now I grant you, most people at that rally didn't really think if Republicans sweep in the next election cycle that Mitch McConnell would be ordering 5 boatloads of the same type of chain that Kunta Kinte wore in Roots. But just to say it, and to get away with saying it, what Biden said and the way he said it tells you a lot about the hypocrisy and the mentality of the supposed left. People that are the most clueless in not realizing it's one system. The liberal animal farmers have another ace in the hole beyond the demonic Republicans in managing the insane hordes. It's called the agenda. This country was supposedly founded on freedom and leaving people who are not harming you alone. Being left alone is a perversion to the left. If you have an agenda, you need the infrastructure of the federal government and the left to force it down everyone's throat, or force it up everyone's ass, depending on which direction the agenda is coming from. If you have a cause, it's likely that cause won't be embraced by people who just want to be left alone. The Democrat Party offers a giant Hercules who will put everyone he can find into a headlock to accept all the Democrat agendas. A main tactic of the liberal animal farmer is to make it seem completely normal that a $1 trillion behemoth government should be used to shove things down people's throat all day long. The minions of government gladly accept their role in doing this because if people were just left alone, nobody in government would have a job anymore. Yes, from, quote, women's rights to tree huggers, the federal government is the very best way to honor freedom by making millions bow down to endless agendas that come from the left. Yes, the entire Democrat structure and its animal farms are hard to figure out. If something truly is a mental disorder, there's no reason to spend any more time trying to understand it than what we've done here. Brand it as nuts and let's simply move on.